A fishing boat was sinking. Not dramatically, not all at once. The way real disasters happen. Slow, invisible, one failing system at a time. The Halcyon Star had been taking on water for 6 days. A hairline fracture in the hull, below the waterline. The bilge pump was compensating. Nobody knew the bilge pump was failing too. On board, 7 men. 6 of them were sleeping, 1 of them was not. Her name was Sena 38 years old, the only licensed marine engineer on the vessel, which also made her the cook, the logbook keeper, and the person who noticed things everyone else had learned to stop noticing. She was the person who heard what the ocean was saying. Tonight, it was saying something was wrong. Sena had fished Alaskan waters for 11 years. She had no Maritime Academy certificate, no credentials that looked impressive on paper. What she had was 12,000 hours in the guts of vessels most people never saw. She could diagnose a failing engine by sound, the way a doctor diagnoses a heart by pulse. Her boss, Darcy Trout, did not value this skill. "You're logging too many maintenance flags," Darcy told her the morning after they docked. He didn't look up from his paperwork. "The Halcyon cleared its last inspection. The hull's fine." "The hull passed because the fracture is below the inspection threshold," Sena said. "That doesn't mean it's fine. It means the threshold is wrong." "You're my engineer, not a naval architect." "I'm the engineer who kept your boat from going under 6 nights ago." Darcy's expression said, "You're expensive and difficult, and I'm calculating whether one cancels out the other." "File the report," he said. "I'll look at it when I have time." She filed the report. He never looked at it. Sena walked past the Nordcore Marine Technologies building every morning, a massive glass tower at the end of the waterfront, a stylized wave inside a circle on the side, engineering the future of the sea. She knew the company's name. She didn't know who ran it. She didn't know the man who ran it had a daughter dying in a hospital, or that the work Sena had been doing for 11 years, all those reports filed into silence, was the only thing that could bring that girl back. She just walked, collar up against the rain, heading for her truck. Another invisible morning. Nordcore Marine Technologies built acoustic monitoring systems, deep-sea sensors that listened to the ocean floor, detected pressure changes and tectonic shifts, and translated them into early warnings for coastal storms and infrastructure failures. 42 countries, 3 major storm events averted, over $2 billion in estimated damage prevented. The man behind all of it was Callum Voss, 53 years old, a former oceanographer worth $3.8 billion. His daughter's name was Tala, 16 years old, 6 weeks in the neurology unit of Seattle Children's Hospital following a near drowning at a school swim event, a cardiac episode in the water, brief anoxia, and then the long, terrible aftermath that nobody had a clean name for. Tala was conscious. She could speak, recognize faces, but her vestibular system was compromised. Her short-term memory was fragmenting. She was losing herself in pieces, and the speed of it terrified everyone in that room. She needed a specific treatment, a proprietary neurological monitoring protocol, repurposed from Nordcore's own acoustic technology for intracranial pressure monitoring. The protocol required a hardware component, a sensor calibration chip. There were 11 of them in existence. 9 were embedded in weather stations across the Pacific Rim. 1 sat in a Nordcore lab drawer. 1 was in the possession of a woman in Kodiak, Alaska, who had no idea it existed. A Gen 3 acoustic chip, Tala's neurologist, Dr. Anand, told Callum. Modified for intracranial use. We've used it twice. The results were significant. Tell me what you need, Callum said. Nordcore discontinued the Gen 3 4 years ago. The replacement is too large for pediatric application. The Gen 3 is the right size, the right frequency range. There are almost none left. I built this company, Callum said. I'll find one. Dr. Anand's voice carried what she wouldn't say out loud. I know you'll try. Callum's team spent 2 weeks tracing the missing chip through decommission logs, shipping manifests, field maintenance records going back years. The trail ended at a single report, filed by a field engineer who'd serviced the Kodiak survey buoys before the upgrade transition. A notation on Buoy Station 7, Gen 3 chip removed, found damaged, replaced. Chip tagged for return to regional station. It had never arrived. The name on the report? Sena Malachi. Callum read the document, set it down, then said 2 words. Find her. Sena remembered the chip. It hadn't been damaged. That was the easiest box to check. And the supervisor who'd signed off was a man who checked boxes rather than reading what was in them. The chip had been recalibrated. There was a difference. During the field decommission, Sena had noticed that buoy station 7 was producing anomalous acoustic data. Not faulty data, different data. The kind that looked like instrument error to anyone who hadn't spent 11 years learning what the ocean actually sounds like. To Sena, it looked like something worth hearing. She'd pulled the chip, spent 2 weeks in her bunk running raw signal data through free analysis software, then wrote it all up into a 14-page technical report. She sent it to Nordcorps' regional office, to the Alaska Department of Natural Resources, to NOAA. Nobody responded. The chip sat in a waterproof case in a locker on the Halcyon Star, because Sena had never been able to throw away a piece of equipment that still worked, even when the world seemed indifferent to what it was saying. She kept tracking the signal, on her own time, without being asked. She didn't know that 4 years later, Nordcorps' own scientists would be trying to model the exact phenomenon she'd documented. She didn't know her report, sitting unread in 3 filing systems, contained the data that could have advanced their research by years. She didn't know the chip in her locker was the only thing standing between a girl in Seattle and a treatment that might bring her back. She just fished. She filed reports. She listened. And one Tuesday morning, a man in an expensive coat showed up on the dock, asking for her by name. "You filed a maintenance report in 2021, Callum said, holding a copy of it. Gen 3 chip, Station 7, recalibrated, not damaged, retained for further analysis." Sena looked at the paper, her handwriting. "You read that this morning. I've been looking for that chip for 2 weeks." He didn't look like the men she was used to, men who treated reports like inconveniences. He looked like a man who had recently learned what it felt like to need something he couldn't buy. "Why now?" she asked. He told her about Tala, the accident, the injury, the chip, all of it, without performance, the way a person speaks when they've run out of room for strategy. When he finished, Sena looked at the water. "I sent you a report," she said. 14 pages, signal data, analysis, and a flag that something unusual was developing west of Station 7, something your software wasn't designed to catch. "I know. Nobody read it. I know that too." "I have the chip," she said. "I'll give it to you. I was never going to keep it. It's your equipment, but I need you to hear something first." She pulled out her phone. 4 years of field data, photographed and organized in a folder labeled simply 7. "The signal is still there. It's getting stronger. The pressure signature matches pre-event patterns from 3 historical storm formations, including one that hit north of here in 2018. We had 12 hours warning because someone was listening." Callum looked at the phone. His face changed. "You've been tracking this for 4 years? On your own time? Without being asked? Someone has to. Why?" Sena looked at the gray reach of the water, at the enormous, indifferent expanse of it. "My grandfather was a fisherman in Western Samoa," she said. "He used to say the ocean doesn't lie. It only speaks in a language most people never bother to learn." She met Callum's eyes. "I learned the language. It seemed wrong to stop listening just because nobody was paying me to." Tala was getting worse. Intracranial pressure climbing for 6 days, a slow, rhythmic increase that Dr. Anand could not stabilize without the monitoring protocol. "We're out of time," she told Callum by phone. 48 hours. After that, we're talking surgical intervention. Callum had spent 4 days in Kodiak with Sena's data, her logs, her chip, 300 pages of field notes kept in waterproof binders aboard a fishing vessel. His scientists had done a preliminary analysis and gone very quiet, in the specific way scientists go quiet when they realize they've been looking at the wrong data for years. The chip was in his bag. He made Seattle in 6 hours. Tala's readings resolved over the next 18 hours. By morning, she was stable. By the end of the week, she was sitting up, drawing again. The same things: water, fish, waves. Callum sat beside her bed. She held up a drawing, a small boat on a very large sea. Below the waterline, barely visible, wavy lines. "What's down there?" Callum asked. "The part we can't see," Tala said. Callum's chief scientist, Dr. Ishikawa, came to him 2 days after he returned to Seattle. Her expression lived somewhere between scientific excitement and professional shame. "She was right," Dr. Ishikawa said. "Right in 2021. The signal has been developing exactly as her analysis predicted. We've been modeling this phenomenon for 8 months using different data. We had the right data for 4 years and didn't read it." Callum stared at the report. The date stamp from Nordcor's regional office. Received. Filed. Not because she was wrong, because she wasn't the kind of person whose reports got read. He pulled up Sena's employment record. Certified marine engineer. 11 years with the same company. Current salary? $52,000 a year. He thought about the conference dinners, the Forbes profiles, 42 countries. His company's tagline, "Engineering the Future of the Sea," and a woman earning $52,000 had been doing that work for free, in a bunk, on her own time, sending the results into silence. He picked up the phone and started making calls. Sena was in the engine room when her phone rang. She almost didn't answer. Bilge pump diagnostics to run, the maintenance log backlog. She answered. It was Dr. Ishikawa. "Your Station 7 data, the 4-year series. The pressure development pattern is consistent with an emerging submarine geological event west of the Aleutian Zone." A pause. "In your assessment, how urgent is further investigation?" Sena set down the wrench in her hand. "Yesterday," she said. A longer pause. "I was afraid you'd say that." Dr. Ishikawa's voice was controlled. Under it, the sound of a scientist reckoning with wasted time. "Would you be willing to come to Seattle to present your findings to our research team?" Sena looked around the engine room, the diesel-stained walls, the bilge pump she'd fixed 3 times in 2 months, the logbook filled with data that had traveled exactly nowhere. "When?" she asked. "As soon as possible." Sena had never been in a room like the Nordcor conference room. She'd spent 11 years in engine rooms, in bridge wheelhouses, in the single-berth quarters of working vessels, where luxury meant a porthole that didn't leak. This room cost more than the Halcyon Star. She presented the data without performing it. 4 years of field notes. No apology for the handwriting. No apology for the gaps when the ship was in dry dock. She just showed them what she'd heard. When she finished, Dr. Ishikawa said, "This is the most detailed longitudinal acoustic field series we've ever received from a non-instrumented observer." "Non-instrumented," Sena repeated. "I used passive hydrophone data and my own ears." "I know, that's what I mean." Callum leaned forward. "I want to retroactively classify your 2021 report as a formal Nordcor research contribution. I want to compensate you for 4 years of field data, and I want to offer you a real position. Title, salary, the department you should have been running years ago." Sena looked at him. "I'll take it," she said. "But I have conditions." Callum waited. "The Station 7 data goes to NOAA, publicly, immediately. It belongs to the people who live on that coastline, not to a corporation." She met his eyes. "Your company sells ocean safety to 42 countries. That's good. But the people who've been watching those oceans the longest, the fishermen, the coastal workers, the indigenous knowledge holders, they haven't been part of the system. They've been the source material nobody bothered to credit." A quiet fell over the room. "I'm one person. There are thousands of us. Fishing crews, harbor workers, coastal station operators, people who can read storm patterns from bird behavior and wave rhythm. They've been generating real, longitudinal, ground-level data for decades. Data no sensor array can replicate." She leaned forward. "You want to fix your early warning system? Build a network. A real one. One that pays people for what they've been doing for free." Callum sat back. "That's a significant infrastructure investment." "Yes," Sena said. "It would be. If we built it, the network, the compensation structure, the public data repository, would you lead it?" Sena looked at the water through the floor-to-ceiling glass, the same water that connected to the Bering, to the Pacific, to every signal she'd been listening to for 11 years. "I'd listen for it," she said. "That's what I do." 3 weeks later, Callum brought Sena to the hospital. Tala was sitting up, color back in her face, restless in the way of teenagers who have been still too long. On the table beside her, a stack of drawings. "This is Sena," Callum said. "She's the reason your doctors had what they needed." Tala studied Sena with careful teenage eyes. "Do you listen to the ocean?" A pause. Something shifted in Sena's face. "Yes. How did you know?" "I kept dreaming about signals," Tala said. "When I was in the bad part, when I couldn't remember things right, I dreamed about something under the water, trying to get heard." She looked at Sena. "My dad said you found it." Sena sat down in the chair beside the bed, not because she'd been invited, because something in her knees required it. "I didn't find it," she said quietly. "It was always there. I just kept listening." Tala reached into the stack of drawings and pulled one out. An ocean, cross-sectioned. Above the surface, a small boat. The low, wavy lines of sound radiating from a single point on the ocean floor. And in the corner, a small figure at a console, headphones on, bent close to the equipment. "I don't know why I drew her," Tala said. "I didn't know you existed yet." Sena took the drawing with both hands. In the picture, the figure at the console wasn't straining, just attentive. The way you look at something you believe in, even when no one else does. "Can I keep this?" Sena asked. "I made it for you," Tala said. "I just didn't know it yet." At the Nordcore press event, Callum stood at the podium in his own building and said something he'd never said before in public. "This company has built its reputation on the claim that we listen to the ocean. And that is true." He paused. "It is also incomplete." He described the Station 7 signal, a marine engineer on a commercial fishing vessel, no institutional backing, no budget, who had been tracking a developing geological event for 4 years and sending the results to every agency that should have cared. He held up the report, the date stamp visible from the front row. "Received, filed." "We have been listening to the ocean," he said. "We have not been listening to the people who know the ocean. There is a difference." He announced the Field Observer Network, a paid, formally recognized program integrating maritime workers, coastal communities, and traditional ecological knowledge holders into Nordcore's data infrastructure. 200 initial participants, a public data repository, compensation at market research rates. He announced retroactive payment to Sena Malachi for 4 years of field observation, calculated at senior analyst rates. He announced the Callum Voss Foundation, named, with his daughter's permission, dedicated to ocean literacy and citizen observation science programs across the Pacific Rim. At the back of the room, near the door, Sena stood in the same jacket she'd always worn, the electrical tape repair still on the shoulder. She didn't move to the front. She just stood there and felt something she didn't have a precise word for. Not pride, something quieter than pride. The feeling you get when something you've been saying into an empty room is finally said back to you by someone with a microphone. 18 months later, Sena stood at the monitoring console on the bridge of a Nordcore research vessel, headphones on, bent close to the equipment. The Station 7 event had resolved exactly as the data predicted, a slow tectonic settlement significant enough to have ruptured a coastal pipeline if left undetected. Sena's early warning had given regulators 11 months of lead time. The pipeline was rerouted. The coastline was clear. She was officially Senior Director of Field and Indigenous Observation Sciences at Nordcore, a team of 26, a budget, a conference room where reports were read before they were filed. She still did her own listening. On the console beside her, a drawing in a simple frame, an ocean cross-sectioned, a boat, waves of sound rising from the deep, a figure with headphones leaning in. At the bottom, in a teenager's handwriting, the part we can't see. The signal came through steady and clear, not a warning, not an alarm, just present, continuous, the ocean, still speaking. And finally, someone was still there to hear it. There are people in your world right now who are listening to things the rest of us have learned to tune out. They're in engine rooms and dock offices and overnight shifts and unglamorous places where the real information lives. They're filing reports into systems that never open them. They're watching signals grow louder in data nobody asked them to gather. They are not nobodies. They are, in many cases, the only bodies that matter. Sena Malachi's grandfather used to say, "The ocean doesn't lie. It only speaks in a language most people never bother to learn." He was talking about the ocean. He was also talking about everything else. So here's the question I want you to carry with you. Who in your life has been saying something true for years, filing the report, logging the signal, keeping the data, and going completely unheard? Because the answer to that question might matter more than you know. If this story moved you, share it with someone who shows up quietly and keeps showing up. Subscribe so you never miss a story like this one. And if you've ever been the one sending reports into empty inboxes, this one was for you.